what we have done from the beginning is that we have come up with a program, even though without funding, and then we present the program as it is, and then we expect support on the basis of what we want to do, and then if there is a need to make adjustments, then we make adjustments accordingly. But I think the main thrust in terms of how we operate is that we have a program, and that program is the one that we want funded, rather than funding a program that is not in tune with what we would like to achieve.
Any donor that puts money into a program should expect a positive result at the end of it. If you put money into a program and you introduce into that program elements that set it up for failure, then you are throwing your money into a bottomless pit. But if you work with the recipient of that assistance in understanding what the program is all about, in putting in place strategies that work, then that support is worth every cent, is worth every money. I'll tell you what the Americans would do. Well, I have no qualms mentioning them by name. They would walk into a political party and say, we have this money. If you embark on program A, B, and X, we'll give you that money. Those programs will not have been thought out properly. There would not have been sufficient situational analysis to determine whether they will work. Now, as I'm talking to you now, I don't have specific numbers, statistics, but I know that all, if not most of the NGOs that received funding on the basis that they would achieve regime change, they have now collapsed because it did not happen. And the donors are standing out there and blaming the NGOs for having failed. They have totally exonerated themselves. They are not saying we were also complicit. We should have realized that this was a risky venture, and boldly state that this program in particular, one, is not about regime change. It's about strengthening the capacity of various security sector institutions to deliver services to the citizenry in a manner that advantages the citizens and also makes the sector an integral part of a state that has transformed itself. It's got nothing to do with what the British think. It's got nothing to do with what the Americans think. It's got nothing to do with what even the Swiss think. It's got a lot to do with what we as Zimbabweans think our security sector should look like. Of course, it is absolutely important that before you enter into some agreement with a donor, you have a very clear understanding what it is you seek to achieve in that partnership. That is, if it is a partnership. We have to understand why a donor, for instance, puts money into a particular program. What is in it for that donor? If the interests coincide, you'll begin to negotiate those interests so that you have a common understanding. For us, as the Zimbabwe Peace and Security Program, it's very simple. A donor who understands that our work is based on consensus building right across the board, that it might be a slow process, but it is a lot more sustainable, that they understand that as Zimbabweans, the kind of regime change that we have in mind is not based on hatred, but is based on broader values of how a normal state should conduct itself. It doesn't matter what I think about Mugabe, for instance. It's totally irrelevant. The most important thing is he is the president of a state that has a security sector that needs attention, serious attention at that. if I allow my obsession with him as a person to dictate how I then put a program in place, chances I will fail. If I approach it from the perspective that if Mugabe sat there and you asked him directly, what is the kind of Zimbabwe that you want? Would he say, I want a Zimbabwe that is dictatorial? Would he say, I want a Zimbabwe where women are oppressed? Would he say, I want a Zimbabwe that is a police state? Would he say, I want a Zimbabwe where the army runs roughshod over all the people? Would he say, I want a Zimbabwe where women are strip searched at the border? He would not say that. He would say all the good things that any leader would say, but the opposite would happen. It is that opposite that we then seek to deal with in the program and say, this is what you said, you as the head of state, this is what we seek to achieve in response to your broader needs as a country. One of the things that some of us regret on hindsight is the attention that was paid to opposition politics by foreign entities, and then conflated principles like democracy, principles like human rights, with the security sector program or security sector space. That had the effect of polluting, one, the definition of the sector, two, the objectives of the sector, three, the definition of what it was all about became a hostage to some of these opportunistic interests. Yes, one understands the interests of the international community in ensuring that every country enjoys freedom, enjoys human rights, and so forth and so on. If you do that as a parachuted kind of exercise, it is not going to be sustainable. It merely poisons the environment, which is what happened.
I think maybe so far we've been lucky. Most of our partners have not been imposing type. They have sort of appreciated our approach.